Hello, this is foodoffensive.com's weekly video update coming at you from the front lines of our food supply. This is my attempt to bring you news and food updates about what's in our food supply, what we can do to change those things, what we can do to avoid them. It's been a couple of videos, a couple of weeks since I've actually been sitting here at the desk in the studio covering a special report. We ended the high fructose corn syrup series of special reports several weeks ago with a 4-part series. I finished that off in the grocery store, and then I went back to the grocery store for a couple of weeks in a row to look at surrounding the 4th of July and the barbecues that we'll be having and the cookouts that we'll be having. If you're in Colorado here, you probably didn't get to do much camping or anything because of all the fire bans, but as far as the food goes, cooking out on your home grill or out with family and friends by the lake if you're in another state, then you kind of maybe had some exposure to some of those items, and hopefully I kind of brought awareness to that. Maybe not only looking at all the bad things that are out there, but also the good things, the things that we could do to eat instead of, in place of, and good alternatives. And so I'm coming back here into the studio for a series of special reports, and it's going to be quite a lengthy one because I'm titling this series Sweets. That's capital Sweets. Because there are so many of them, and there's so many things in our food, so many things, maybe health issues related to those. There's so many artificial sweeteners out there that we need to really be aware of. And I've kind of pointed those out. The high fructose corn syrup and the aspartame, I really, as far as sweets go, I really looked at those two sweeteners. And I pointed those out mostly when looking at beverages and things, but I wanted to go into depth on different issues. Obviously, the high fructose corn syrup we won't be doing because we already looked at that, but we're going to look at some natural sweeteners, some artificial sweeteners, things that are good for us, things that we should avoid, and why. Going to depth on each one, taking a couple. There'll be several where I'll just spend one whole video on that particular one. But to get going here, I'm looking at an article. Actually, it's a website, sugarandsweetguide.com, sugarandsweetenerguide.com. You can see it here on the screen if you're watching the video version of this. And this is their comprehensive all-sweetener list. And it includes all the most sweeteners, natural and artificial, that you are likely to come across. And also some of the other names that they are commonly used. For example, fructose is sometimes called levulose. So it's important when we're reading labels, I've been trying to educate on reading labels when actually going into the stores and, looking at what's really in those things and the things we can't pronounce we really need to look into. But, this thing is extensive. It really is. Agave syrup, aspartame, birch syrup, blackstrap molasses, brown rice sugar, cane sugar, coconut palm sugar, corn sweetener, corn syrup. Going down the line here, fructose, which is sugar, honey, lactose, levulose, maple syrup, molasses. Obviously I'm not going to take a whole week of all these because it would take a whole year to do all of these if you did one a week, but just picking out some of the common ones that are in our food I think is important for us to do. And there's sweetener brands. It even lists all the sweetener brands. I think that's important to look at as well. But moving right along into my broadcast this week, this is going to be an introduction. This is the first part of this series on sweets and sweeteners. And I refer to an article by Mercola.com, Dr. Mercola. He has an article titled "Artificial Sweeteners More Dangerous Than You Ever Imagined," and obviously I'm not going to get into all the artificial sweeteners specifically. He points out a couple, by name in this article, but I wanted just to look at a few different ones. And what he says here, manufacturers, marketers, and others with financial interests have successfully convinced millions of consumers the chemicals used in artificial sweeteners are safe. And he goes on to say, don't believe them. And skipping down here, remember, he says, if you're consuming a food or beverage created in a lab instead of by nature, you can be assured your body doesn't recognize it. This opens the door to short-term and long-term health problems for you and your family. And of course, he looks at some specific ones some reasoning behind some of these. You think, well, if they're really that unsafe, how are they allowed to even sell them to us? Well, one of the reasons, flexing political muscle, he says. The FDA, has obviously been convinced that, say, for instance, aspartame is good. All this, and then also deceptive safety studies. There are studies done by, when you have a company that's trying to get a product passed, they're doing their own safety studies and their own tests. That's kind of a conflict of interest, but yet we and our regulatory agencies allow that to happen, and so that's how we've gotten some of the things we have gotten on our shelves. And then there's political and regulatory dirty tricks, kind of alluded to that. Just various things here he points out, and I don't want to read each thing here. It's quite a long article, several pages here. I just want to make sure there's nothing else here I wanted to point out. If you're watching the video version of this, you can see that I have things highlighted and I show them on the video. I think it's important to show what I'm reading from, and it's not just me up here saying this stuff. So there's also some good information from Mayo Clinic, and I wanted to look at different things. This is particularly pointing out artificial sweeteners. It says artificial sweeteners, understanding these and other sugar substitutes. And so in a few minutes that we have here, I wanted to look at some of the things they point out. It says understanding artificial sweeteners and other sugar substitutes. Sugar substitutes are loosely considered any sweetener that you use instead of regular table sugar. So anything that you would use in lieu of. And then it goes down, for instance, some manufacturers call their sweeteners natural even though they're processed or refined, as is the case with stevia preparations. And that's one I'm going to look at particularly because it's one that's kind of popular right now, and we'll look at that later on. But it goes on to say, and some artificial sweeteners are derived from naturally occurring substances. Sucralose comes from sugar, for example. Sometimes sugar substitutes are categorized by whether or not they contain calories also. Okay, artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners are synthetic sugar substitutes but may be derived from naturally occurring substances, including herbs or sugar itself. Artificial sweeteners are also known as intense sweeteners because they are many times sweeter than regular sugar. Some of these are like 100 times sweeter than regular sugar. And then it goes on, some of the possible health benefits of artificial sweeteners. Obviously, there's a weight control. People can, without calories, people use it for a weight control. They drink diet soda. My motto in the past has always been, if you have to drink a diet version of a soda, you shouldn't drink it at all. I mean, I can't drink the stuff just for the taste alone. But once you get past the taste, the safety issue involved with it is just astronomical. So, but if you have to do concern with weight control and want that soda, there's artificial sweeteners are a benefit of that. Diabetes, helping people with diabetes control that. And then also it points out dental cavities. It says, unlike sugar, artificial sweeteners do not contribute to tooth decay. So, important to note. And then the possible health concerns. They've tried to link it in the past to cancer, and this particular article says there's not enough evidence of that, but we'll look at that. Some of the things that I've seen are contrary to that, but it says artificial sweeteners are regulated by the FDA as food additives, and they must be reviewed and approved by the FDA before being made available for sale. And then it points out in some cases that the FDA declares the substance generally recognized as safe, or GRAS. And they've done that with the GMOs and other things, and so it's a little bit concerning. Part 2 of this article, I had 2 pages of it here in order to get all the information on here. It also covers sugar alcohols and novel sweeteners. Sugar alcohols are carbohydrates that occur naturally in certain fruits and vegetables, but they also can be manufactured. They're lower in calories than is regular sugar, but making them as an attractive alternative. And then also, novel sweeteners are a combination of various types of sweeteners, so they actually combine some. Let's see, uses for some sugar alcohols they're found in many processed foods. You might see this on when you're looking at maybe candy products or other things, frozen desserts. It says chewing gum. If it says xylitol on there, it's that's referring to the general term sugar alcohol. So you can look for that on your ingredients label. Some of the health benefits, there are the weight control, the diabetes, and the dental cavity benefits again. Some of the concerns, there are a few health concerns, such as if you eat too much of it, there can be a laxative effect causing bloating, intestinal gas, diarrhea. Obviously, eating too much of anything can cause you problems. So, natural sweeteners. Natural sweeteners are sugar substitutes that are often promoted as healthier options than processed table sugar or other sugar substitutes. It lists a few like date sugar, grape juice, concentrate, honey, maple syrup, molasses. I mean, these are things that come from nature, things that come from our natural environment. So, obviously, those I think are going to be better. And then it goes on to the concerns. The benefits. There's really no concerns. But that's just an introduction to sweets in this series that I'm going to be working on. But stay tuned for that as I go through various types of sugar. But until next time, this is foodoffensive.com's weekly video update coming at you from the front lines of our food supply. Thank you for joining me.